Christine, you okay? Ready to go? Yep. Okay, hopefully you've all been suitably refreshed, and we've got another block of 3 presentations for you. The first of these is from Torsten. Torsten's also from the Swedish Mapping, Cadastral and Land Registration Agency, and he's come to talk about data quality. Data quality is something that we should all be concerned with as data professionals. And there's a couple of ISO standards, 157 Part 1 and 157 Part 3, that are moving through the stages at the moment. In fact, we had a session on them yesterday. So Torsten here is one of the authors of these standards, I think. So he's come to tell us about how they're developing, and no doubt try and be able to tell us when they will be available. It's over to you, Torsten. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I will. I'm Torsten Svärd, and I will talk about see if I have some action here. No, there. About some news about geographic information quality fundamentals, the ISO standards 19157 Part 1, and a little bit about coming Part 3. I work at Lantmäteriet and with cadastral quality and some other things, specifications and so on. So, and I'm project leader with Ivana for this project. And I will talk about some overall things about updates, terms, and the old amendment, and then new descriptions of how to check conformance to the standard with requirements, recommendations, and permissions, and how it works. Then I will give you some overview over the standard and components of data quality, and then take a glimpse of Annex D, and how we will separate quality measures to the standard as Part 3 as a register. For overall updates, we have incorporated the amendment, which describing the quality using coverages. We have revised terms. Someone is removed, and someone is added, someone is moved. And then you have some examples for how to describe quality with a coverage, where you can click on the map and get metadata information about updates and so on. About conformance is a new rewrite chapter with new 2 conformance classes with dependencies to other standards, and that the content shall follow requirements. And then you have also recommendations and permissions in the standard. The second content conformance is about XML encoding, which according to the standard 19139, and then some kind of namespaces and how you do that and implement in XSD schema. Then we talked yesterday about maybe we have to add something about JSON later. Well, who knows how we work in ISO later. About requirements, recommendations, and permissions, we have a new way to describe it in the standards today, and we have put it in highlighted boxes and further described in the chapters. Recommendations and permissions are not impact on the result of conformance testing. As an overview over data quality, in that clause we're describing how you can work with data quality. Note that quality is reported in metadata and can be supported by a quality evaluation report. The quality evaluation report, which is not anymore standalone as it was named before, it should not replace metadata. It should complement it. And then how to use quality measures in a data quality measure register. This project will start, it has started, but today we are waiting for some things to really start. It is described in the old standard 19138 that it could be stored in a register, and now we will do so in the future. For components of data quality, the data quality unit is a combination of a scope and a quality element. A scope for quality evaluation and a scope to report in the quality report can be spatially separated, overlapping, or share some extents. And in comparison to the scope in the specification, you have some common attributes, extent, and level. Maybe you can reuse them when you're testing and reporting quality. But scope description are a little different from the specification standard 19131, as you see. Then scope code will complement by scope description. So there is some difference. For all classes, we have adopted the prefix DQ, which were in the older version, and we have renamed some of them. For instance, DQ element have we renamed to quality element to separate them from other elements, and we have taken away completeness from commission and omission. The old one, DQ scope, is already moved to the metadata standard as MD scope. Usability, you see the empty red circle, is not anymore in the standard. We said that it's dependent on the user. In the new standard for specification, you can put in use cases and compare to them, and using the other data quality elements you have in this standard. About components, more components of data quality. We have new multiplicities for measure reference and evaluation method that we required in this standard. There you can write and use MD identifier, name of measuring, and a description of the measure. For data quality evaluation, we have make the evaluation method as an abstract class, which should be implemented as full inspection, sample-based inspection, indirect evaluation, or aggregation derivation. And the new thing there is the name and deductive source if you have external sources. And for quality results, we have added in the amendment included in this standard now. And some news about quality measures. It's still here how to describe them, but the measures itself will be put out in a new part. And we have added formula to be readable by machines, where you can describe the formula used, and then which kind of language you describe the formula in. You can still have the Bruce graphics to show a readable, human readable way. And about data quality measures, we have a new part 3 for this standard, as we will start working with now. Next week, I think it's the registration authority will be voted, and we have wait for the CD of 19135, which describe how to work and store a register. And this is also according to the old standard 19138, which describing it could be a register. So it's not so much nowadays, but we will implement it. So now we're coming to some quality evaluation example. There is a description of feature types, including rules, conformance quality level in the specification. This is an example from transport network we will go through. It says in the specification that max 2 items can be missing for each feature type. Max 2 items can be excess for each feature type. And max 2 feature instances can be misclassified as another of the transport network feature type, and so as other feature types. So this is what you can compare in your quality test. In this example is in Annex D. There are, in the annex, you can see all 4 pictures of reality and universe of discourse and what data said. And then you can see all these errors you can see in the data. If you look at the green circle, there is one path missing there, and the yellow circle is one path in excess. And then you can see here if, in the table how many errors count you have and the quality limit, and then if the data will pass the quality tests. Then we have also some XML examples, how to structure XML in the standard, but I will not show it. Here it's too much codes, I think. And then how to report the quality. It shall be reported as metadata. And then you have an optional quality evaluation is describing how you can describe how have you done this evaluation. And then aggregation, derivation of results can be aggregated and derived. And it's important to maybe write how you have done it in an optional quality evaluation report. And yes, this was what I have to tell about today.
I'm not so much known with the data quality standards, but just a blunt question. Doesn't it take a long, doesn't it take a long time and energy to do all that quality evaluations if you go through all the data? Or do you have a specific statistical test principles that you use?
Yeah, probably. Maybe I will retry it before we have done it at Stockholm yet. So, but we are working on it, and we collect something when we store data. We have a project how to say that in some part of Sweden we have rights requirement and so on, and when you have a smaller piece of extent, you can say here it's completed. So you maybe the user can see here is completed data, and outside it's not. And when you're measuring things, you can store how you have done it and get accuracy on it and so on. So if you do it right from beginning, it's not so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Torsten. I've got one small question for you. The examples of quality you showed on there are probably what a lot of people think are quality missing items on the map and things like that. Have you given consideration to the quality of metadata? Because increasingly people are using the metadata to do their initial analysis and things.
Meta quality.
Yeah.
We have how we have done this quality evaluations is one part of this, and uses the same quality elements.
Okay.
As,
So that's in there. That's great. Yeah, because there's nothing more frustrating than going to a data set and downloading a set of metadata and it being very poor, or patchy. So I think the quality of metadata is just as important as the quality of the data. So yeah, thank you very much, Torsten.
Hi, I have a maybe just a comment or adding to the answer to your question on the quality of metadata. From 19157-1 or 3, metadata set is just a data set. So everything applies what the quality model in 19157 specifies. So you can actually apply it for evaluating your metadata set. From that perspective, there is no difference. It's just data.
Just that. Okay.
Semantically, there is a difference, but conceptually, from the quality model, it's just a data set.
Okay, so it's just treated the same. Okay,
Yes,
thank you
exactly.
very much, Ivan.
Perhaps positional accuracy doesn't apply, but some other elements might.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Caroline Lind from the Swedish Mapping Cadastral Agency. And she's going to tell us about something called GeoCell Reinforcement Resource. I must admit, this is not something I know very much about, so I'm looking forward to finding out more about it. That's why Caroline gets mic'd up and we find a set of slides. Am I right the first time? All right. Yeah.
Mm. Ja, det måste... Perfect.
Okay. Welcome, Caroline. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you. So, hello everyone. As you already know, my name is Caroline Lindy, and I'm here to tell you about how the military concept of a geocell became a civil crisis management resource. I've been working at Lantmäteriet for about 12 years. And the last 10 years, I've been at one of Lantmäteriet's departments that work mostly towards the Swedish Armed Forces. So we support the Swedish Armed Forces with geographic information and expertise. This department is called Geographic Support Establishment, or GOSE. So when I'm not helping the Swedish Armed Forces to get better at using geographic information, I manage a civil crisis management resource called the GeoCell Reinforcement Resource. And some of you may have heard the term GeoCell before, but for those of you who haven't, I will try to explain it to you a little bit better. Let's see if I can. I don't know where I am on the screen here. Okay. No, that was fine. Okay. Okay, great. So what is a geocell? A geocell is a delimited resource that consists of GIS experts, methods, IT equipment, and geodata. And this resource can collect, process, and analyze geographic information and produce customized maps. It's configured to be able to be offline and can work as long as there is electricity available. The Swedish Armed Forces imported this concept of a geocell by the British military during the conflict in Kosovo in the beginning of the 21st century. A British officer transferred the knowledge of the geocell setup and methods to the Swedish Armed Forces through my department, GOSE. I think he was at GOSE for a year to transfer all his knowledge. And during a period of about 15 years, GOSE educated geocell personnel from the Swedish Armed Forces twice a year, from 2 days up to 4 weeks. And that personnel was then deployed to Swedish military geocells in Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Mali. Let's see. And the mouse doesn't work. And then in 2018, this resource came to be a civilian resource as well. And I will try to explain how. So let's go back a few years in time. Now you're wondering what you just saw. No, it's not a chickenpox outbreak. It was all the registered fires in Sweden during the time period June to August in 2018. Quite many, eh? It was a very dry and hot summer. And the size of the dots represent the area that each fire affected. As you may have noticed, 2 fires stick out, both ravaged in northern Sweden. The largest dot represents an area around the small village of Kårböle, affected by several fires beginning in the middle of July. These fires resulted in that the concept of a geocell was introduced to civil crisis management. So around the village of Kårböle, 3 different forest fires broke out within 2 days. So on July 14th, lightning strike started the fires on Nötberget and Engra. Water bombings from the air started the next day. And on July 16th, the fire in Enskogen was discovered. The 3 fires were quickly out of control. And in this movie, you can follow the fire progress based on satellite imagery from the Copernicus program between July 17th and July 27th. After a lot of different resources being sent to the area, both national and international, the fires were under control about 2 weeks later. And from August 5th, the rescue operation was phased out. So how come the military geocell was sent to help out with fighting the forest fires? On July 18th, a request was made to Lantmäteriet for a GIS expert. Why not use the military geocell owned by the Swedish Armed Forces, but managed by the GOSI at Lantmäteriet? After a quick deliberation between Lantmäteriet, the Swedish Armed Forces, and the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency, it was decided that the geocell would be sent to the affected area. And from 6 p.m. on July 20th, the geocell was up and running in a school in a town not too far from Kårböle, together with the staff planning the rescue operation. 2 weeks later, the geocell could pack up and go home. And for those 2 weeks, 4 operators would be placed in the geocell working day and night to produce maps. And then they could go home. Before the geocell came to help out, this is what the geographic material used in the rescue operation looked like. Old maps mixed with printouts from the internet did not make it easy for the personnel to fight the fires of the same map. The geocell brought military structure to the map making. For example, every map that was made got a unique ID. And this ID was registered in Excel together with the title, date, volume of prints, and customer information. Maps were updated at least once a day. Usually the analytics team drew changes on the last produced map, and that information was then updated by the geocell in GIS before printed again. The main focus for the geocell was to update the common operational picture. And the standard daily order was about 20 overview maps in the size 100 times 150 centimeters. And this overview map was also produced in a smaller paper size that people could show in PowerPoint presentations, usually at staff briefings. And then we also made smaller maps, one for each area of fires. You know, the 3 different areas. And these were usually printed in 200 copies each and distributed to the personnel in the field, actually trying to extinguish the fires. So here you can see the maps being taken out to the field personnel. After a while, the maps included other kinds of information, like safety instructions and encouraging messages. There were a lot of different challenges that faced the geocell during the weeks it was activated, and here are some of them. One critical challenge was addressed immediately as the geocell arrived, and that was the difficulty in reporting and receiving a certain position. Getting all the numbers correct over the phone is not easy. And even though Sweden has a national system for reporting a position, not everyone across all fields use this system. So the geocell therefore came up with the idea to create an index over the whole area, where every square was 100 times 100 meters and named uniquely. And this index was printed on every map produced. And the geocell did not hear about any more difficulties in reporting positions after that. One IT component that the geocell was missing being deployed was an office-sized printer. One combined printer, scanner, and copier was bought on the way up to the area, but this could not meet the demand of the 600 smaller maps that were printed every day. So we soon started using the school's printers, but a lot of other functions of the staff would also use these printers. So we kind of had to wait in queue for a while. And then finally, we had two of our own that could print all those smaller maps. Since the geocell wasn't familiar with civil crisis management before, when we came to the area, we were presented with this paper with different kinds of symbols that we were supposed to use. And afterwards, we found out that these were CTAC symbols, which is a standardized symbology library for forest fires. So we had to start with trying to build these symbols in the GIS software. It took a while, but we managed to get there eventually. There were a lot of different government agencies present in the staff in the school, and they all wanted to give us their data, which meant that the geocell kind of had an information overload, and we couldn't handle all the data that came in. So we had to prioritize and focus on our main task, which was to update the common operational picture. After the fires, it was clear to many that there was a need to set up a civilian geocell. So an agreement was made between Lantmäteriet and the Swedish Civil Contingency Agency that gave Lantmäteriet the assignment to set up and manage a geocell that can be used in civil crisis. During the spring of 2019, Förstärkningsresurs geocell was established, and that's the geocell reinforcement resource. So personnel was designated and IT equipment was purchased and configured. And the geocell counts as one of the Swedish Civil Contingency Agency's resources for crisis management and can only be activated by the Swedish Civil Contingency Agency. So the geocell consists of 16 operators that all work at Lantmäteriet, and you can see that they've spread out across Sweden. And there is a schedule for every week of the year where two operators during a week at a time is first-time choice to be deployed. And they all, if they're being deployed, they have to pass through Gävle, where Lantmäteriet's head office is, to pick up the equipment. And in a crisis, the geocell is designed to be manned 24/7, and the operators will rotate about every 5 days. So the geocell equipment consists of 7 different sized collies that can be loaded into a smaller size truck. And the equipment consists of 4 laptops, 1 large printer and 1 smaller printer, a network attached storage, and all of these components are connected through a router. And it can run for about 1 hour without power supply using the UPS. And there is also an iPad for collecting information in the field. And we have lots of paper and ink with us. And the GeoCell can be self-supplied with food that will last them 2 days. The GeoCell reinforcement resource is set up to be able to work without internet access. This creates certain limitation when it comes to geodata and its actuality. So the Swedish Civil Contingency Agency, Lantmäteriet, and the Swedish Transport Administration has since 2020 recommended certain national geodata products for crisis management as a background map. These, you can see them there in the list, are downloaded and packaged 4 times a year. Orthophotos and elevation data is excluded from that since it's updated once a year. The GeoCell data structure is based on a division made in the web course Koll på kartan. I translated into being control of the map. So for those who speak Swedish, I can really recommend this web course. It's about 1 hour long. So we have the base map division, and then we have more theme-based maps. And then during a crisis, we update the kind of crisis data. The methods for updating the common operational picture has changed since 2018. And since last year, it's based on methods of brandGIS or fire GIS. And brandGIS is a project run by the county administrative boards and contains many different parts. From how to update the common operational picture to collect information in the field during a forest fire. And this project is being more and more known across all different levels of government and emergency services. So this means that when the next large forest fire occurs, all GIS personnel will hopefully work very similar. That was all from me. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Has anybody got a question for Caroline? No?
Yeah, I know. Need the microphone. So obviously you're using printed maps, print out maps. And did you discuss the advantages of printed maps against digital platforms like laptops and smartphones?
We're looking into having some kind of portal to share the common operational picture. But since the GeoCell is a military concept, and in the military, printed maps is still the thing you should have and use. But hopefully next year we will be able to do both in case of a crisis.
I can imagine in emergency circumstances that printout maps are always there, of course. You don't rely on
Sure.
technology.
Yeah,
No.
that's what's practical.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The question I have for you, Caroline, really is around this common operating map that you talked about.
Mhm.
What sort of decisions were the emergency services making based on the information that you were providing?
Pardon, what kind?
What sort of decisions were they?
I think you have to ask the emergency services, but usually you could see towards which direction the fires would move into,
Yeah,
and then they could take decision on where they should be and
Yeah.
where they should try to stop the fire.
so really quite basic logistics stuff, and where to
Yeah.
water bomb as well. Would those type of decisions be made on the information?
Yeah, probably, because the main focus was where is the fire heading.
Okay. Yeah, so really quite crucial, timely information there to make things go smoothly. That's great. And then just one other question, really. Are there any plans to extend this work to other civil contingency emergencies, say flooding, for example?
Well, we're supposed to be able to cover that too, but I think still fires is the most like where things needs to be updated quite quickly and over a longer period of time.
Okay.
And flooding, usually it floods and then it goes back. So it's not kind of the same.
Right. So
type
you're on
of
site
crisis.
for longer for a flyer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, this is our final speaker before lunch. We're really fortunate to have Chris Boddy here from Australia. He's done nothing but complain about the temperature since he's arrived, but we have actually managed to persuade him to give us a presentation. And Chris's area of expertise is in land administration. So you are quite brief in your description here, Chris. So it's not usually how you are when we meet you in the street or anything like that. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words. So
terrific. That's perfect.
Just remember, you are standing between us and our lunch.
Yeah. All right then. So I've got a heap of slides, so I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to acknowledge those people behind my name who are basically the bulk of the intellect around the model itself. I'm just the guy that just leads the program and have little knowledge around LADM. So if you've got questions, Abdullah is in the room, thankfully, and he'll be able to provide that information. All right, Chris. Wow, okay, terrific. I'm going to quickly go through the history, the parts, the reasons why we're starting to do this in the global sphere, and if we've got time, some examples, but the examples are there. So I flew over Australia on Saturday. It takes 4 hours to get from one side of the continent to the other. And this picture is out of about an hour and a half out of Sydney. On the left-hand side is we've got a lot of rain in Australia at the moment, and it's flooding. And you can see on the right-hand side is a Google map of the Darling River. And you can see where generally the river is a small one. Now it's a big one. And also the continent is fairly flat and red. And for 2 hours, it's like this. However, the history of the LADM is starting back in 2006 through FIG's initiatives. And we've been through 12 is their first iteration or first edition. And it's now taken us to this point in time to go through edition 2. And edition 2 is now broken up into multiple parts as opposed to additional 1. So the purpose of doing land administration is fairly complex in terms of what it wants to achieve and cover. And these are just some of the examples of topics that we need to cover for a good land administration environment. So, as I said, we've divided into 6 parts. 5 of the parts are in train already, And the 6th part will be starting with hopefully OGC next year. So I'll just go through the various parts now for you. So the timeline that we've got has been a fairly ambitious one through the current status of all the parts and so forth. And one of the challenges that we've had in the work program is how to ensure the various parts link up and are consistent with each other. And it's taken us some efforts around that. So you can see from what part 1 does has also relationships to parts 2, 3, 4, and 5. And thankfully, we've had a consistency of editors throughout parts 1 to 1 to 5. Part 1 provides just the generic conceptual model, and it outlines its requirements, but also it acknowledges the importance of edition 1, and we've made sure that it's got backward compatibility. And also, as I said, it also links up with the various other parts of 2, 3, 4, and 5. It outlines, defines and references the LADM's basic information related to components of land administration. And as we saw in the earlier parts of the slides around some of those names for or topics that they need to cover. So it's got the basic parties, basic administration, spatial units, and the special classes. It also provides the terminology. It provides the basic national and regional profiles, which have been developed in edition 1 on a number of countries and profiles and so forth. It also caters for a global vocabulary. And what we've seen through the implementations, especially from the Netherlands and its associated work through in South America and Africa, they've started to implement some of this work. As I said, we've had significant contributions to those groups that have outlined in that slide there. And we'd for part 1, the ballot goes out to the member states, our members, next week, and we'll finalise it ends in early March. And if everything goes right, and hopefully we've done our work correctly, we'll have hopefully minimal comments. Part 2 is land registration, and this is an extension from then from part 1, and it's basically it's taken most of the work out of the edition 1 and has put it into part 2. And you can see the various models associated with part 2. It also links up with some of the good work that the OGC's land infra work, and also it's also integrating some of the concepts that the OGC indoor GML work also has been doing. So you can see the starting the richness and improvement on edition 1 to edition 2. And as noted earlier in the morning session, is going into 3D environments and so forth to helping out those multi-story buildings and so forth around who owns what. Again, it's fairly ambitious, and we hope to have a CD planned for submission in December this year. The marine georegulations is, or what we've done is that we've acknowledged that while land is important, so is the marine side of things. And we've taken a lot of work from IHO's standards in S100 and started to insert their findings and so forth into the LADM Part 3, and also around marine limits and boundaries in United Nations conventions for law in the sea. So there is, so we're linking up all that good work from IHO. So there are the packages. I won't go through those. They're there for you in the presentation. The ballot is already out and it ends tomorrow. So hopefully by Friday will be either the thumbs up or the thumbs down if we've succeeded. And again, thank you very much for those countries who have contributed to that part. Valuation is an important facet that we've introduced into the LADM Edition 2. And these are the areas that is happening with the valuation process. Again, we've had work already, and we've been the editors have been working, and they've been also very ambitious in terms of getting the CD ready for this month. Spatial planning is part 5, and this is where basically starts to link up some of the work in parts 2 and 3 and expands the activities a bit more. These are the countries that have contributed to this part, and also we're hoping to get that done as a CD in December. So, and then finally 6 is going to be, we'll get all this parts 1 to 5 probably in line, and then we'll throw it over to OGC and its members and its industry partners to say, all right, then we've done our bit. We're going to ask OGC to look at how they're going to start implementing this in the industries with like Esri and Trimbles and so forth, which Esri have been doing significant work already in this space. But these are some of the issues that we may want to follow up. So there is, for all this happening, there is a cooperations that we need to bring everyone together, and thankfully these are the partners and groups that we've been contributing, and I like to again acknowledge as FIG's significant contribution in this area. It's been magnificent. 5 minutes, terrific. So I just wanted to update you on why we're all doing this and who's driving what. One is the UNGGIM environment is doing that, and also through the Sustainable Development Goals. We've started to link up on significantly around the goals and their subgroups around why nations need to improve their land administration. Mature countries like Sweden and Europe and Australia and the US have got very good land information and land management and administration, but there is a lot of other countries that don't, and these are the reasons why we're doing it. And the framework for effective land administration, FELA, is also under the UNGGI's Land Administration and Management Program, has also indicative of said we're going to follow ISO 19152. So I've mentioned about the development goals, and we've got a number of them, but especially around goal 11, which is the smart cities and so forth. So quickly, a use case that has been done. So this is happening in Kenya. So they bring together how important the community comes together and says, this is where we think that this is my land and so forth. And it's a community activity. So there's identifying a person through this process, sharing the results as a public inspections and so forth. They bring everyone together. They agree from satellites and collaborations during those meetings. They put it into the various databases starting to using the LADM program. And finally, it's come to their agreement and so forth under the framework that we've done. So that's it. It's a fairly quick whirlwind of the various parts. But again, I'd like to acknowledge and thank FIG's contributions to this so far what we've done. So yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. There's a couple of things struck me from listening to you speak. One is that you've got all these parts running at the same time, so it must be a bit of a headache to try and make sure they all fit together. But the prize in doing it that way is that you get a coordinated set of standards. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think this is the first real time, effort within ISO TC 211 that we've done a multi-part, nearly in parallel with a whole lot of programs. One of the beauties, though, that we've had is that we've had a dedicated group that's going through parts 1 to part 5. And that has been a great benefit to ensuring that there is consistently a thinking from all the way through from part 1 to 5. Yeah. Now, that's a lot of resources, but what we've done is condensed that work more so than if we were doing it from, we'll finish part 1, we'll start part 2, 3, 4. We would have been here for another 30 years and people lose interest. So by concentrating it into that period, then it's maybe harder to organize, but you're reaping a lot of benefits from that. Yeah. And also, I think while we've done a lot of this work through COVID, so we've had a lot of team meetings through that, and that I think has also helped through that rapid process of understanding that you don't have to be in the same room everywhere in a single spot. And I think what we've done over the last 2 years is Zoom and Teams and those sorts of platforms have improved significantly. That's helped us to get to our end point.
Okay. Any questions for Chris? Gent in the back.
All right, so just remember,
Thank
I'm
you.
not the expert, so Tron.
I'm not an expert, you know that. But how do you link up the S100 standards to part 3 and 6? And what is your working relation with IHO?
IHO, we've had Doug O'Brien, who's got a huge knowledge base around IHO and how they're working and so forth. So the maturity of their standards is fairly good and understood. And what we've been doing is really moving IHO's documents to be fully integrated with the land administration information. So that's no longer sitting out in their space. We've now started to integrate a whole range of their program and making sure that also links up with the conceptual models and thinking from land into their water environment and so forth. So it's now more seamless than ever before.
Yeah, but there's no dependency. Like if the S100 series kind of change, you have to change your.
No. Well, Abdullah. No, we have to. All right,
Okay.
bugger.
Scott.
So Chris, you talked in part one that there's a capability for profiling explicitly defined. So how does this play with the controversy for the last 8 years since the first edition was released on fit for purpose land administration? Is this now more formally supported as many of the contributing nations would like? Or is this still somewhat discouraged as other nations would like?
Look, I don't know how we're going to address some of these country profiles. We've got some good examples of the country profiles and how we've been doing them in the past and so forth. Part one basically gives you a basic a framework that you can work to and so forth. And then it'll be up to each of the countries to work through what's important and that sort of thing. So we're not looking, so the mature countries, they've got their own, we're really starting to give those countries that have got struggles with land administration, profiling and so forth, a framework that they can work with associated with that. And also it links up with the World Bank's requirements for some of their lending to those particular countries through taxations and that sort of thing.
Anyone else?
Serious.
Gentlemen.
Talk about a global vocabulary. If you say more, is that our countries expected to map their local vocabularies to that vocabulary? How's that working?
I got no idea.
What's that?
I got no idea.
Okay. All right. Then question two, what's the relation to 1 and 144, the land cover land use? I mean,
Yep.
Is there any leverage there?
So thankfully there is, because Doug O'Brien is in both camps. So yeah, so we acknowledge and understand that there are relationships and so forth. It is about how do we as a community start to better integrate and collaborate and understanding the various models and so forth, requiring those. But certainly there is a constant in a person across both. And we know that we've got the land cover, land use and land administration is similar in concepts. So we understand that. Thankfully, at the high level of the models itself are principally, yes. Yeah. All right.
Okay. Just before we finish, and I've got one question for you, Chris. Have you received any sort of feedback from land administration professionals, land tenure professionals about as these standards come out? Are they going to be well received?
Well, that's our intent. Our intent is we are really hopeful that it's well received, and the feedback that we're getting from our engagement, especially through Cadastre from the Netherlands, has been very positive. It's been positive at the UN side of things, and also through the Part 6, the implementations. We're really hoping that we get it pretty right with the industry's implementation and engagement. Esri's already has already had a long history with some of this work already. So they've got significant knowledge around this data modeling anyway. So we're pretty confident that we've got it right than not.
Okay. Great. That's great news. Thank you very much, Chris. I think it's a fantastic piece of work, and the way you went about it, I think is probably a model for others, really, just to get on and get it done. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So it's lunchtime now, so we'll take a break until 1:10. You can back into the room, and we've got a further half-dozen presentations with a cup of tea or something in the middle. Okay, so we'll see you back in this room at 1:10. Thank you.